Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. President Muhammadu Buhari arrives in Morocco for a two-day working visit to King Mohammed VI on matters relating to the socio-economic matters of both countries. Human rights lawyer Femi Falana throws his weight behind the president's conferment of the highest honor in Nigeria on late MKO Abiola. One person dies, two others are wounded from an IED explosion in Mubi, Adamawa State. US President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un arrive in Singapore ahead of their historic meeting on Tuesday. ChannelsTV.com has more information for you, and on youtube.com/channelsweb you can watch our videos. You can also watch us on your mobile device via your browser or download the Channels TV app for Android, iOS and Windows devices from their respective stores. Now, besides giving you access to news updates on the go, the Channels TV and Channels 24 app have an eyewitness feature that you can use to share pictures, videos or news of happenings around you. Just install the app, then tap and swipe to reveal the menu and follow the instructions. To some of the stories that you sent in, let's begin with this one from Mokwa-Jeba Expressway, Niger State, showing this collapsed bridge, which our eyewitness reporter says is the only link in that axis between the west and the north. He laments the discomfort residents have had to cope with since this happened and calls for a quick fix. Next is this image from the Lekki-Ekpe Expressway in Lagos State, showing a truck overloaded with plastic containers. Our eyewitness reporter is raising concern about the danger this portends for other road users. He calls on the Federal Road Safety Corps to extend their tentacles to this part of town. Finally, is this image from Etiosa, still in Lagos State, showing these men of the Federal Road Safety Corps during the celebration of the 2018 World Cycling Day. That's our eyewitness reporter. They're advocating that every Nigerian embrace riding of bicycles as an alternative means of transportation, saying it does not only serve as a physical fitness exercise, it also reduces stress-related diseases like cardiovascular diseases. Thanks for looking out for us, and please note that you can report events as they happen around you. Youth leaders in the Niger Delta are raising concern over the spate of oil theft in the region. The group under the aegis of the Niger Delta Ethnic Nationalities Youth Leaders Council is appealing to the federal government to look into the activities of the joint task force codenamed Operation Delta Safe. They're alleging the JTF has done nothing to prevent the unabated illegal oil bunkering in the region, insisting that the task force has compromised in its primary responsibility of protecting oil installations. After their second quarterly meeting in Warri, Delta State, the group passed a vote of no confidence on the commander of the JTF. At the time of filing this story, all efforts to reach the JTF spokesperson proved abortive to confirm this story.
Illegal ship owners and vessel owners are coming into Nigeria without following due process, and they are siphoning our oil out of the shores of Nigeria without the Nigerian government knowing, without NNPC knowing, without NAPIMS knowing. And this is dangerous to us as a people. If that is possible, if that can happen with the JTF that is given the responsibility to man critical oil installations in the Niger Delta, if this can happen before them, then one morning we will wake up to say or to see that the Niger Delta region, particularly the Nigerian states, has been taken over, has been overrun by strangers. More so that we are getting close to the 2019 election. So many things are about to happen. People that can come in with their big ships and vessels to take oil can as well come with dangerous weapons to Nigeria in preparation to the 2019 election. And the essence of this press conference, the essence of this World Press Conference, is to ensure that we contain all of this.
Nigeria's foreign trade currently stands in the positive territory, giving reasons to celebrate the trade balance of 2.2 trillion naira realized in the first quarter of the year. With about 20 days to the end of the second quarter, there are indications that oil exports, which supported the first quarter trade report, will also buoy more trade for the country. In this report, Channel's business correspondent Temple Ashaju takes a look at Nigeria's deficit performance of the non-oil sector.
Latest reports from the National Bureau of Statistics shows that Nigeria's trade balance surplus rose 21% to about 2.2 trillion naira in the first quarter of 2018 from 1.8 trillion naira in the preceding quarter. On a year-on-year basis, the figure represents a 221% shift from the 0.7 trillion naira performance in the first quarter of 2017. The positive balance was largely supported by an uptick in exports, which rose 20% quarterly and 56% year-on-year, while imports expanded by 19.2%. Boosted by the positive oil price environment and domestic production volumes in the quarter, crude oil exports accounted for 76.3% on a quarterly basis and 65.1% year-on-year.
Now we are out of recession. Thank God the prices are inching up again. And so what it calls for us is we have also seen accretion in reserves. And so we're managing the resources in such a manner, the central bank, with their monetary policies, are managing in such a manner that we wouldn't have that kind of experience again.
There was also a 7.8% uptick in manufacturing exports as agriculture contributed a paltry 1.6% to total exports in the period, indicating a crude oil-driven trade balance and a wake-up call for structural reforms of the economy by diversifying away from oil and improving non-oil exports significantly. As it stands currently, Nigeria's trade balance remains volatile with high exposure to the deficit territory, especially in the absence of crude oil or another fall in price. Temple Ashaju, Channels Television News.
Joining us for some analysis of the impact of oil prices on Nigeria's foreign trade is our data analyst, Babajide Ogusowo. Babajide, great to see you again.
It's my pleasure to always be here, Amara.
Okay, so we're going to start off on the foreign scene. Well, this is something I look forward to, that meeting between President Donald Trump and the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un holds on Tuesday. Will this meeting have any impact on our trade relations with the United States?
I think it will, especially if you consider what the Center for International Policy say about Africa. They say in another 3 decades, 1 in every 4 humans will be African. Let us think in for a moment. They say by the end of this century, 40% of the world's global population will live in Africa. So the impact and the importance of this meeting is Africa, especially led by Nigeria, we now need to start trading in ideas. But are we trading in ideas, Amara? No, we aren't. We are trading in blames. We are currently trading in blames between the APC and the PDP. We are trading in blames between President Obasanjo and former President Buhari and former President Obasanjo. We are trading in blames between cattle farmers and crop farmers.
In other words, we're more overwhelmed by our own internal problems.
Oh, yes. So we need to trade in ideas. That is where the future is. Especially if we look at this meeting that will be happening in another 48 hours. Africa has a huge role to play because we know that in another 30 years, Africa, based on several research, will be the most important destination for trade. And so we should really ask ourselves, who will be representing Africa when Donald Trump meets Kim Jong-un?
Or who's listening to the conversation and who will be drawing the lessons from it?
Oh, yes, clearly. Because in Africa, if we know we will be the #1 destination for trade, and we know that we cannot achieve this if we do not have global peace, with all drop of blood in me, Africa needs to have a representative in that meeting.
Okay, let's talk about our foreign reserves, foreign trade, and so on. What are the main insights from the recently released foreign trade report by the National Bureau of Statistics, as reported by our own correspondent?
So those are where the numbers are. Let's decode it and make it very simple. There are 3 things that summarize what's in this report. The first is our non-oil exports is improving. So in the first quarter of this year, we sold non-oil exports, which simply means non-crude oil sales of over 1 trillion naira, the highest as compared to previous periods in 2015, 16, and 17. In that same report, you will see our performance of crude oil, over $12 billion in the first 90 days of this year. Again, Amara, that is the best performance we've had since the similar period in 2015. So we see a significant improvement in not just only our non-oil exports, we see a significant growth in our oil exports. Most importantly, we see our balance of trade moving into that over 2 trillion naira territory. We remember in the first quarter of 2016, our balance of trade was negative. Now we've moved into a position where balance of trade over 2 trillion naira. Non-oil exports over 1 trillion naira, and indeed our balance of trade is really looking much better than it was previously. So we see a lot of positive sides and a lot of reasons to be happy with what the current data shows. But here's the challenge. The future looks quite oily. And what do I mean by the future looks quite oily? Even though we are selling a lot of non-oil exports, our total crude oil sales still accounts for 76% of our total sales. Compare that to 63% in the first quarter of 2015. The impact of all of this is we still are highly dependent on crude oil. The second thing is to look at how much oil we're selling to Europe. Approximately half of all crude oil sales ends up in Europe. What this means is that we still have a significant currency risk exposure to Europe. And also we have an employment risk exposure to Europe as well, because over 85% of all goods we manufacture in this country still ends in Europe. So those are the three risks we need to focus on: our currency risk exposure to Europe, our oil risks exposure to the world, and indeed our employment risks.
And it sounds like you're saying that we should continue, with our dependence on oil, because we haven't really done well with non-oil exports.
We cannot continue with our oil exports to every country in the world, because we need to increase our non-oil exports. The evidence does show that over time, our non-oil exports is what can lead us to the promised land, not our oil exports. So yes, oil exports are more stable than previously, but we now need to grow our non-oil exports, especially in the agricultural sector. We need to see how we grow cocoa, how we grow sesame, how we grow cashew. We also need to invest in not just selling these products in their raw state. We need to invest in processing, which allows us to gain more value. Let's look at cocoa, for example. We sold over 29 billion naira worth of cocoa to the world in the first quarter of this year. Netherlands took half of our cocoa. So we need to invest more in processing cocoa, which allows us to get more value. Especially, we need to really look at how we minimize our foreign risk exposure, not just to Europe, but to other states in the world. We should also remember in the final words of Kwame Nkrumah that says, we don't look east or we shouldn't look west, but we need to look forward and stop trading blames and now start trading ideas.
Very important. It's something I think the CFTA would have helped to correct. Thanks a lot, Babajide, for joining us on the News at 10. And when the News at 10 returns, Igbogiri community in Edo State sends a Save Our Soul message to the state government over the need for primary health centers. We'll have that in our community report. Do join us again.